Hey there! Welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, finally, we've got the newest album from Amanda Shires, Nobody's Girl. There was always going to be another side to this conversation, and this album was just a matter of time. And by now, you probably all should know the context. In March of 2025, Amanda Shires and Jason Isbell completed their divorce proceedings after filing in late 2023 citing irreconcilable differences. And if you had heard any of their albums in the early 2020s, this would not be a surprise. The seeds had been planted for a long time. But I won't deny there was this sad, regretful twinge knowing there are kids involved and that they wouldn't work together again. Yeah, like it or not, they made some phenomenal music, and that's kind of relevant to discussing the art. And Isbell, somewhat, tried to be gracious when he put out the entirely acoustic Foxes in the Snow earlier this year. It's not a direct record of the relationship collapse so much as blurry snapshots that are scattered throughout time. He didn't precisely mince words, but there wasn't so much venom as there was this bone-deep sadness. More favorable framing, even if I wasn't about to let him off the hook, because I heard Take It Like a Man in 2022, and I knew Amanda Shires' account of the divorce from her perspective would not be far behind. And let's make this abundantly clear, regardless of my opinion on the art, either way, I've got no interest in taking sides in the second major country divorce I've had to cover since Rustin Kelly and Casey Musgraves, at least in the indie scene. There was always going to be this gut-wrenching parasocial mess to the whole proceedings and a lot of the publicity, where the whole conversation around truth versus art was going to wind up ambiguous, and I was inclined to believe, well, the worst about them both. Neither of them have really shied away from it. And nothing makes that feel more pronounced than Nobody's Girl, where I would not be surprised if Amanda Shires had listened to Foxes in the Snow and set this album not only as partial response, but the sad, dark mirror to parts of its story, where after hearing both albums, I'm absolutely inclined to believe them both, at their best and at their worst, because there's a painful level of acute honesty in how they frame each other and themselves. And there's not a lot of difference there. And there's no way around the paratext. Isbell is the type to try to write his way out, very Hamilton in that. Do the stoic self-care and attempt to heal even when words could fail him. There is a framework and assumed grace that comes with going solo singer-songwriter with the acoustic guitar, but Amanda Shires knows the industry and a smaller audience will not give her the same grace, nor runway to play it so understated, so it's going to be presented with raw theatricality, hang all the pretense. Like her last album, also produced by Lawrence Rothman, it feels haunted and cavernous, the thick but steady percussion and thrumming bass underscoring the somber pianos and pedal steel, and every aching creak of her gorgeous violin. Seriously, how it adds so much musical punctuation to Living and Streetlights and Stars, and especially Can't Hold Your Breath, can be the saving grace to some tracks that otherwise keep a pretty uniform palette, and perhaps run a little longer than they should, especially in the back half of the album. Although a lounge-leaning cut like Lately feels a bit chintzy and out of place, probably could have been cut. But it is a mix built to heighten that heartbroken emptiness and the anger and somewhat familiar chord progressions, even if I wish Rothman gave Shires' vocals the full expanse and didn't occasionally opt for more of an clipped live pickup. Although it is appreciated that on a few shockingly up-tempo songs like Peace of Mind and Strange Dreams, Rothman's actually willing to give Shires some tangible, meaty guitar snarl alongside her fiddle, even if I'm not always sure it's the best fit for her voice. But her trilling yet husky delivery can often feel choked up with emotions that seethe behind a lot of repeated mantras, where you can tell much of what was written about each other, it rings true. But Shires is also correct to highlight on the very devastating early cut the details, with every slow drag of fiddle and piano. Jason Isbell's the one with the esteem, the masculine indie country singer-songwriter pedigree, framed as the victor simply because he's bigger, and she's not gonna allow him to leave the truly unflattering details out. A stark echo of Nico Case's Rusty Mountain, and the most potent reply to Isbell's Gravelweed that I can imagine. Like with Fault Lines before it, the album's probably worth it on that song alone. And thus it gets interesting to note that outside of confirming much of what she already described on Take It Like a Man when the relationship was on the rocks, you're not going to get that many grisly details about how and why they separated outside of lingering emotions, where It's Complicated barely covers it, where Shires is, by necessity, taking longer to fully unpack and tear into the irrational injuries that can't be easily contextualized, and where she might crave some reckless release. She knows how it looks. She just can't be bothered to care. She's nobody's girl. Why not lose it for a little while? Which is why the song of that name, after being predominantly acoustic, dissolves into this churning nightmare fuel on the back half. It's really musically effective. But it is different when you watch her struggle to find new paramours and rebound, especially if feelings might linger on a cut like Streetlights and Stars, where, as described on Maybe I, there is a newfound refusal to change or compromise after having given probably too much. She's nobody's girl, but the sadly grandiose ballad Friend Zone feels like the most stark example of the tragic consequences. Very early Caitlin Smith, and that's a compliment there. And not only does it feel painstakingly real in the aftermath of a divorce for a woman in her 40s, it leads to a very stark contrast as her wider angle songs feel considerably darker. Compared to the radical optimist who tried to interrogate privilege as he dreamed bigger, Can't Hold Your Breath, the penultimate song, stares straight into the larger global miasma, where divorced from privilege, Amanda Shires can really see the bottom. At least by the closing track, she finds something close to peace in a more intimate setting, and by that I mean nothingness. She doesn't think of Isbell at all anymore, and whether it's just numb depression or finally scraping the slate clean, I'm not sure what would sting to him more. But to pull it all together, well, you can't pull it all together, not easily. I had to sit with this one a while to fully digest it. It is excellent, with a few of the same problems in execution that Take It Like a Man had, some questionable mixing, especially around the vocals, and it feels more pronounced over the extended runtime, but that also only seems to accentuate the difficult reality that this sort of fissure and this sort of healing does not have a linear or easy way of coming together, especially when the emotional wounds run deep and complicated and you need time to let it all fully unravel. As such, it can be a difficult listen, regardless of any parasocial observations or if you care about the relationship at all. But with those observations, reminds me of watching an older friend crash out after a long relationship falling apart, and you know you really can't help them no matter what bad choices they might make, because you know in your gut that'll be probably how they heal, even if there are more scars along the way. Nevertheless, absolutely worth your attention. Amanda Shires is a fierce enough personality and singer and writer to have earned that. Her fiddle remains gorgeous, and you probably missed this in the late September release glut, and you shouldn't have. Check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I'll admit this one was difficult to fully untangle for some very obvious reasons, and admittedly it was not an album that I really wanted to go see. The recent wedding and honeymoon, that's kind of not the mood and vibe I wanted to take. A little bit later gave me a little bit more time, and I still had to sit with it because Shires' methodology, it relies more on the emotional through line than the written through line, and as such, I'd argue it feels a little bit more true to the expression, and some of the flaws might as well considered features. But hey, comments down there below. Have fun. I can imagine this might be a little polarizing. And I do find it very telling that both Isbell and Shires are very accurate and in sync with describing themselves and each other from both of their points of view. And I think that adds a lot to the verisimilitude of the songs, and if anything, it makes them feel all the more true and heartbreaking. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in getting albums on my schedule, or helping support the channel, or just arguing with me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Don't feel obligated, tough times, I understand, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.